Hi students, it's me again. We're doing a video class today because I'm still out of town. So thank you for being flexible so that we can have our class remotely. I'll see you in person again during our regular class time next week. Okay, but for today we need to cover two more topics for chapter one. So we go ahead and finish up chapter one this week. So far in your notes, you should have the first three theoretical perspectives or points of view that sociologists use when they're examining, in their systematic way, society on the macro scale and or human interaction on the micro scale. So, um, so today we're going to talk about that fourth theoretical perspective. And we're going to talk about how we conduct research and the care that we have to use. We have to be pretty careful since we're studying humans. We have to follow a strict code of ethics and we have to organize our research and collect the data that we're going to analyze about society and human behavior. We have to collect that in a systematic way so that we know that we can rely on that data to be valid and we have some accurate assumptions about that data. We can make accurate conclusions about the data that we have collected because the data itself is accurate. So the four theoretical perspectives, today we're going to cover the fourth one, help you decide as a sociologist what are the kinds of questions that you're going to ask the data to reveal, what kinds of hypotheses are you going to have about society and about human interaction on the micro scale. And that helps you formulate your conclusions about the data that you collect. Okay, so let's get started with the new material for this lesson. So we've already covered the first three of the four theoretical perspectives. Those are functionalism at the macro scale, social conflict theory at the macro scale, and symbolic interactionism at the micro scale. The fourth theoretical perspective is called post-modernism, and one or two words, I usually see it as two words, post-modernism, and it is a theoretical perspective that allows sociologists to use either the macro scale or the micro scale, depending upon the issues, the questions that you want to ask. Postmodernism is really interesting to think about because it doesn't give you a set proposal of or a starting place, a set position to think about when you're formulating your questions about society. If you think back to functionalism, it gives you a starting point. The starting point is society has grown and evolved and filled in the gaps of human need for, for centuries and centuries. And so it's structured the way it's structured to make sure that things are stable over the long haul and, people's needs are met in society. Social conflict theory starts with the idea that yes, society has a structure, but that structure has been created by people in power, and that structure that they create keeps them in power and oppresses others. It disadvantages others. So essentially, from a social conflict perspective, there is a lot of inequality in society, and society is structured to keep that inequality in place. We need to restructure to get rid of the inequality. Then with symbolic interactionism, we know that we zoom down to the micro level perspective. Maybe we are informed by information we have using our sociological imaginations or our knowledge of social facts. Maybe we are formulating our questions on the micro scale based on macro scale trends and issues that we know about, such as poverty. We looked at poverty with functionalism and conflict theory. But a symbolic interactionist on the micro scale might try to investigate poverty at the you and me level based on whether home life and styles of life, how those differing styles of life based on different amounts of resources within the household, how do those things affect family dynamics? Does it affect husband-wife dynamics? Does it affect sibling dynamics? Does it affect mother-child, father-child dynamics? Does it affect the dynamics of children who live in poverty in the education system and how they interact with their teachers or the expectations that the school systems have? So you can still use a macro scale situation like poverty and look at how it changes the micro scale daily life experiences of the people who exist in an impoverished situation, and how does that change from, say, middle income families to upper income families. You could do a comparison, or maybe you are interested, like I said, in the education system, or how educational attainment is achieved with by children who exist in poverty. Whatever those kinds of questions are that you have been informed by the macro scale, you're looking at the micro scale and how communication, images, symbolism of all sorts affects the way that we interpret reality and create reality for ourselves. Okay, so those are the first three perspectives. Postmodernism looks at those first three perspectives, and it doesn't give you a fourth unique perspective or position to start from with your analysis. Postmodernism simply suggests that the first three theories are incomplete, or in some cases, the criticism is that the first three theories are outdated and too limited in their scope to be able to give you a full understanding of life today. I told you that functionalism has been around since sociology has been around, which is like 150 years, 200 years now. And social conflict theory is about as old as that. It's, over 100 years old now. Well, society has changed a lot in 100 years. So if functionalism is 150 years old and social conflict theory is 150 years old also, or 100 years old, or thereabouts, then maybe they're missing some key points of society's structure now that have taken place in the postmodern era. We talked about how sociology was born as a result of the massive social changes that took place in the Industrial Revolution and the urbanization or city building that took place as a result of the Industrial Revolution. Well, since that happened, we've had leaps and bounds, and we're not really a machine-based society anymore. We're more of an artificial intelligence-based society now. We've got computers. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. I'm talking to you face-to-face, sort of. You're interacting with me, sort of, but I'm really not with you in my physical presence. And so this kind of technology that we're using right now to communicate about our class, that did not exist 100, 150 years ago. So this kind of communication pattern that we're using gets my voice, gets my educational offerings out to way more people than than people would have been able to take advantage of 100 years ago when this wasn't, readily available to people. So on the macro scale, there's a lot of components of society, lots of parts of society that have changed, have been updated, have been outdated, and perhaps postmodernism suggests that perhaps functionalism and social conflict theory, as macro scale approaches to studying society, perhaps they don't get the full picture, because as society has changed, those two theories have not changed. They have the same approach to studying society today as they took 100, 125, 150 years ago. And so a postmodernist says, I'm not going to tell you where to start with the way you analyze society, but if you're limiting yourself to just functionalism or just social conflict theory, if you're using a macro level approach, then you're probably missing some key things that don't come to mind when you're just using those strict theories as your basis for asking questions and analyzing society. On the micro scale, a postmodernist would also say that certain changes have taken place in the globalized scope of communication. So symbolic interactionist looks at interpersonal communication and the way we use symbols to communicate and interpret meaning in situations. Well, um, think about the social media that all of us use these days, whether you're on LinkedIn with your resume to try to get a better job, or whether you're on Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or any of the social media sites that allow you to meet people from all over the world and chat with people from, I mean, I just think about my Facebook page. My husband does most of it, but we've got people from Germany and Austria and Honduras and South Africa and Israel and just all over the world who we are connected with on our Facebook page, and we can send them a message immediately. And all the emojis and texting language, all this kind of stuff that has added extra dimensions to the symbolism that we use to interact with. Um, it's just amazing, really, when you think about the nuances of communication and even, memes and the ways that we provide quick synopsis. Synopsis is like a summary, quick summary messages to each other with memes. Many of my 19 and 20 something students today, 19-year-old and 20-year-old students today, tell me that most of the way that they get their news is through memes. Instead of, ABC Nightly News with whoever's doing it now. They don't sit down at 5:30 in the afternoon and watch news like my parents did when I was little and just happened to be in the room to hear stuff. So there's really different modes of communication now that changes what face-to-face communication really means. Skype and FaceTime and all these kinds of things, video chat, that changes what face-to-face communication really means. So these kinds of nuances, these kinds of advancements in technology have also put some kinks, I guess, that's how a postmodernist would put it, have put some kinks in the way that a symbolic interactionist studies the communication process and, the interpretation of symbols. So, there's a lot of different points of view that perhaps the first three theoretical perspectives do not include. So, for postmodernism, their premise is that the first three theories in our four theory families or four theoretical perspectives, those first three theories fall short of really interpreting a postmodern society with globalization and telecommunications that, we can talk to people on the space shuttle or the space station that's orbiting over Earth. We can do all of that with very little delay. And all of these huge changes in society, a postmodernist says, perhaps functionalism, perhaps social conflict theory, perhaps even symbolic interactionism fall short in allowing us to fully interpret the postmodern world. So regarding poverty, for instance, if you want to look at poverty again, since we've done that with the first three theories, a postmodernist might ask the question, what is poverty really? Because in the postmodern world, we have things like lines of credit and credit cards. When I was a college student, people my age did not have credit cards, did not have their parents' credit cards in their pockets, and didn't have the free spending ability that you and I do today. People usually did not go to a car dealership and buy a brand new car and finance it for 7 years at a monthly payment they could afford. A lot of you all, my students today, I see you coming in and out of the parking lot, and your cars, until very recently, your cars were much better than mine because of the free availability of credit. And you don't really own your car. Ford Motor Company owns your car, or Toyota Financing owns your car, or wherever you send your monthly payment for that vehicle. That's who really owns it, and you're just kind of using it until it's paid off. Most of you, I've noticed, don't even wait until it's paid off. My stepdaughter, for instance, there was a major repair that was necessary on her car once, and she hadn't paid it off yet. And instead of doing the repair, she just gave it to the car dealership and said, "Let me drive away with another one." So that's a major change in attitudes about purchasing things and consuming items these days. And so if we use our credit card and we go into debt, that is money that we continue to owe until we've paid it off. So a postmodernist question about poverty might include what the definition of poverty really is to begin with. Because if my income is, let me just throw some round numbers out there. If my income is $100,000 a year, but I have credit card debt or debt for a house or debt for vehicles and debt for I don't know, a motorcycle or whatever other things that I have financed. If my debt is $500,000 and my yearly income is $100,000, then what does poverty really mean? I'm in much more in debt. I mean, I would have to take everything I own to pay off that debt within 10 years or so, but I have to eat and I have to pay my utilities and I have to do all this stuff. So what does poverty really mean? I mean, you might, we used a round number of $100,000. I mean, that's way above what most of us are going to earn annually in our lifetime. I mean, hopefully you will earn that. Best wishes for you to earn that, but most of us won't, frankly. But even if you do, I mean, that sounds like a ton, but what if you're in debt past your eyeballs? Are you poor too? There's a question that a postmodernist might pose. And that kind of situation, being able to finance things and to go into debt and pay it off over time, that is a relatively recent change to our economic structure. Since really the 1980s and 90s, when people really started accepting the possibility that they could go into massive debt to get the things that they want right now and pay it off over the long haul, and feel like that's a normal situation. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, many American families did not think that way, did not do that. They would make a major purchase of a house and try to pay it off so that they could leave something to their children. They'd purchase a car and they would pay it off and keep it for 20 years. Not just 4 years and then just get another one and always have a car payment. So there's some major changes to the spending habits that have happened because of consumerism, which is part of postmodern theory. You can read about that in your textbook. So anyway, postmodernism doesn't give you one set starting point. It simply says if you're a postmodern theorist, you look for additional angles to start from, that maybe the first 3 theories didn't point you toward those starting points. And then you can go from there and kind of formulate your work as you go. And so that's postmodernism. So you need to make sure that you review this lecture. You need to back it up and take notes and make a comparison of the 4 theoretical perspectives that we have reviewed so far. And there will be one more video from me about the research process that we use. Pardon me, the research process that we use in sociology and many social sciences. And you'll need to take notes from that also because it's part of chapter 1. And you should finish up reading chapter 1 by the end of this week. Next week when we see each other in class, I will begin our face-to-face lectures on chapter 2, and we're trucking it on toward that first test date. So your reading assignment, as it's posted in Blackboard, is chapter 1 through 3. You should have chapter 1 finished by now, and begin chapter 2 this weekend and finish it up by the end of next week, so that you're not cramming everything in the night before our test, which is coming up in another couple weeks. Okay, so bye-bye for now and study hard. See you next week.